what if light bulb moment was like, what if we try to build something that we would like? It's work, but unexpected blessing. When you got some Riz, you got to Riz up the AI, man.
Hey guys, as y'all just saw, we have a lot in store for today with Austin Geisert, co-founder of Zute Predictive, an AI consulting company. He shares with us his personal story and a ton of wisdom and fascinating information about artificial intelligence and how young and experienced entrepreneurs alike can approach it. Enjoy this episode with Austin.
Austin, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Yeah. My name is Austin Geisert. I am now a graduated computer science major from Abilene Christian University, and you know, I've had a tumultuous time getting to this point in my life. And one of the things that I decided to do to make things even more difficult for myself was start a business. And, and so that business is an AI consultancy startup called Zute Predictive. And what we do is we help businesses, um, you know, operationalize their business data in a AI form. So we got a great group of guys who are coming alongside us to help us deliver for client right now and hopefully a couple more clients in the future. And it's been just a really fascinating, weird, wonderful experience. Starting this business when I was still a senior, just kind of like out of the blue, kind of like, hey, maybe we should try this. Like me and a couple of friends from back home, and it just kind of morphed and evolved over the course of a year and a half. And now we're here, and I think it's really a great place to be when you can say, yeah, I have taken money from a customer. So really cool stuff there that we could get into in more detail. But yeah, that's, I guess, a little bit about me.
Mhm. I want to know more about what you studied because I got to know you a little bit
Yeah,
in this last year, but not a lot. I
yeah,
knew you were involved with the research group,
yep,
so I want to know about that and more about like your specific things that you learned
yeah,
in your studies.
sure. Yeah, we could dive into that for sure. And I mean, I don't consider myself like a genius computer science scientist. Like I'm horrible at math. I like love the way computers work, but maybe struggle to use them sometimes effectively. I'm just like, why did this not work? And then it's like, oh, it does work. And the process of going to understand why it works is more rewarding to me than anything. Um, it's kind of interesting that you mentioned that because this whole AI stuff for me, like personally, is really bittersweet because I come from a place of self learning first and foremost. I taught myself how to write software when I was a junior in high school, and I'm older. I'm an old guy compared to y'all. Like I'm 28 years old, so that was like 10 plus years ago now. And it was such a magical thing when you were able to see the computer do something when you commanded it to do it. And everybody kind of thinks to themselves, "Oh yeah, a computer. It's kind of like a magical wizard box." And to be able to like tell the computer to do magical wizard things is like really cool. And so I took that. Um, was going to go to the University of Nebraska. I'm from Nebraska originally. Took some time to kind of explore that. But I really realized I really wasn't ready quite aggressively. I had a really serious bout with depression and anxiety, undiagnosed, and I dropped out. And but through that, through treatment and whatever, I continued to write software. I continued to play around. I One of the first things I did when I kind of was in treatment was I wrote a piece of code that interfaced with the Alexa voice system. It's no one really uses it now anymore. You could build these things called Alexa skills,
Hmm.
and you know, I had an elderly grandparent at the time, and I wrote a piece of software that would interface with the Raspberry Pi to blink an LED, an infrared LED, to control a television because he
Oh.
had lost the ability to see his remote, use the remote, but his brain and he could still talk, he could still think but like the the sensory inputs were failing, the outputs weren't failing, but the sensory inputs were failing. And so I wrote that and he used it for a little bit. I think it was kind of challenging for him to use Alexa. This was before we had LLMs, right? Like this, like right when the language portion of AI started to become a real serious study discussion. Because I don't think the attention paper came out until what 2016. So this was before that, and that was just a wonderful thing. And so I kept kind of learning how to write software, learning like what that meant, also learning kind of what it meant to think about business. One of the things that I ended up doing was I worked for three different startups. I worked for a cryptocurrency startup, which was insane. Don't ever do that. Or do. Like if you want pain, suffering, and insane amounts of joy and defeat, all in the same like ball thing. Um,
You were
so
telling
I
us
did
about
that.
that a while ago.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I don't know how much of this I should share because it's very I think it was indicative of the time. This was like 2017, uh, when there was like this huge exuberance about blockchain, and there was so much money and capital being thrown around, and it was a wild west. I mean, we were creating tokens out of thin air by just deploying code to Ethereum. I thought it was just magic because it was like I could write a piece of code that then would execute on a who knows where computer that was running the Ethereum EVM, and it would process money. Like it can program money. Like that's so flippin' cool. Like if you think about it. And I was like, this is like the coolest thing. But the founder of the company was kind of he was over his skis, I think, to put it generously, and he ended up like spending all of our money, and the business shuttered. Um, and so that was a really weird but wonderful like experience. Um, I then kind of took some time off and then discovered, well, just by happenstance, more like this is kind of a lesson, I guess, if I was to digress, keep the people who you know in mind because you never know what opportunities will come that you need other people for, and maybe they'll help you with. So even if you maybe don't know the person that well, you're kind of like, I don't know, or like, maybe they're like an estranged relative, which in my case, I got a phone call from my cousin, my second cousin, like once removed or whatever, just like out of the blue. And I was kind of like in between this lull from the cryptocurrency startup, and I was kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do. I took like one like history class at the community college to piece my dad. I was like in my basement, like trying to figure out what the heck I was going to do with my life. And he calls me up. He's like, "Hey, man," I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, man? I haven't talked to you in like since the last family reunion, like 3 years ago. What's up?" And he was like, "Hey, we've got this really big project for Disney, and we need help. We need software help. Can you help us?" And so that's how I was able to work for a company called Bulu, and they had this Disney subscription box contract. And so we actually did. I built the front ends for I think three or four programs for Disney, and that was really rewarding. Being able to do something like that, and I think when we talk about like what it needs to deliver for a customer when you're on the business side of things, like, and then what it needs to deliver technically, when you're up against a deadline and you have people shouting at the other end of the phone who are, related to Mickey Mouse, it's really real. And I learned so much about what that means and kind of what also matters and doesn't matter. You know, the customer may think that they want a certain thing, um, but sometimes you can convince them that they don't need it. Other times, they're going to ask for something really stupid, but you're going to give it to them anyway because it really, at the end of the day, is just a couple hours or maybe less out of your day. So delivering for them was a huge, huge thing.
So
And
Austin,
yeah,
sorry to cut
no
you off there.
problem.
I'm curious, like, what are those do you have any examples of like things that the customer wanted that
Yeah.
they didn't want? Like, can you
So
share more about that?
yeah, of course, of course. So, and forgive me on this because it's kind of technical, but we had subscription boxes, right? So like people would order these boxes from Hulu, but it really was Disney like subscription. And we had the first box that we did with him was the princess box. So it had like a Disney princess crown. It had like a Disney princess, dress or whatever. But what they wanted is they wanted to have, because there's a bunch of different Disney princesses, right? There's, you got Belle, you got whomever. I don't know all of them. I should, but I don't. And Ariel, whatever. And so you have all these Disney princesses. And so what they really wanted to do is they wanted to have a really specific way that each month a customer would get a specific type of box based on their initial preference. So that we had to build an algorithm to actually satisfy that on the front end and the back end. They both had to agree, right? Like if they press the button initially, it has to like match up. And let's say they wanted to change their order. Okay, well now that's another whole bag of worms. So like that was like a huge requirement for them. It took us a little while to figure that out because you know, months aren't always the same day. Things don't always ship at the same times. So you're dealing with this very fluid understanding of, time and how that is technically when it comes to actually fulfilling a physical item. And then, what the customer expects, which is, well, it needs to be exactly the way they see it and the way they get it. It needs to be explicitly spelled out. So, that was really, 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 really difficult to do. But once we figured it out, they were like, "Hey, can we have like three more of those? Like, can you do three more programs? Because this was awesome." So I think when you talk about meeting a customer need, like yes, it was arduous, it was horrible, it was frustrating, but what did it lead to? It led to more opportunities. So sometimes when you're, especially from a technical founder perspective, if you're like, dang, I don't really want to do this. This is so stupid. Like, why can't we just have, in a specific way? It would be way easier for me, right? But that's not what a customer needs. That's not what they want. Or that's not even what their customers need, because that's really who we were servicing. We were servicing the people who wanted to buy the box. So I I hope that kind of it colors the situation a little bit more specifically. But that was what really was one of the things that really, really, really was like a point of contention that we had to go back and forth with Disney on. It was wild.
Absolutely. So cryptocurrency startup, now Disney, and what's the third one?
Third one. So this one's kind of funny because this one is the I'm working for my dad's startup. So this my father he and a bunch of his buddies got together and they started this business called Octus IQ. And so for a summer I worked underneath the chief technology officer just to kind of see how it was. And you know, it was like basically everything I had been doing up until then. Like it was the same stack, it was the same technology, it was like the same thing. And I kind of was like, do I really need to do this? Do I really need to do this? Or do I want to go back to school? I ended up choosing going back to school, thank goodness, because, not long after that, I found ACU and I came and came here for a few years and, now I'm out. So uh, there's not a lot to say about that, but it's like those three things were really pivotal in kind of growing my understanding of what does it mean to actually be inside of a startup? Like, what does that feel like? And then also, like some of the business operations, when you're talking about pleasing your customer, what sort of technical operations you have to sacrifice, what sort of things like that. So a lot of those things were like, informing my inner desire of like, should I really do something like a startup? Should I really think about that? Do I want that kind of sovereignty in business, or do I just want to work for somebody? So those were all in play, about a year and a half ago when we started Zoot. So that's kind of like the big background story on what kind of started working in my brain when we were like, hey, maybe we could do something with AI.
And
Maybe we could. So uh, and that's the sum of the story. There's the AC part of the story which we haven't talked about, but maybe we could get into that. Turner, I don't know what you're thinking.
well, before we jump into the ACU part, I
Yeah,
was curious how you decided to get involved with startups because I feel like that's not necessarily the first job opportunity that people think of when they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm gonna go get a job," right? But I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of value in being in a startup. It's more hands-on learning. You're getting the experience rather than just like you have these specific uh, 2 jobs that you're doing at a corporate place. It's you have 20 jobs that you're doing at a startup, and you have to figure out a ton of information.
Yeah.
So, for people out there who maybe are just graduating school or out of high school and wanting to find a job, why should they go work at a startup, and how would they do that?
I think one of the prerequisites for doing startup work, and this is my opinion, so I mean, take it with that, is that you have to be really curious. Um, I've always been a super curious person. Like my dad would tell stories about how I was the why kid. You guys know about why kids? They're just like, well, why? Why is that? You
Yeah, yeah.
know, it's like you're 100% like curious about everything, and I think if you're interested in doing a startup, um, you are inherently curious about the way things like not the way like technical things work. You know, that's the way I ended up going. But maybe you're really interested in well, okay, like my day job or my surface level understanding is just not good enough. You know, it's not good enough for me. I need to know more. I have to have that hunger. You know, the old Steve Jobs, you know, stay hungry, stay foolish. Like that's like ingrained in startup mentality. And I think the beginning of that is curiosity. So, you know, I was super curious about science, engineering, mathematics, and I was always trying to like do something or like try something, like make something in the garage, or you know, build something, you know, in a sandbox or something like that. Where my friends may have been content with, you know, playing, you know, card games or you know, riding their bikes outside or playing video games. I was always kind of trying to do something else. So I think if you're a person who's interested in doing something else, a startup is a great place for you because you get to do all of it. You get curious. And I think, you know, that may not be for everyone, but if you're like, man, this is just, this is kind of boring, like high school. It's like, this is kind of boring. Like, I want to do something other than just sit here and listen to these people. I want to actually learn by doing. And I think that's like really important when you start thinking about you know who am I, who am I to try to start up? Well, it's actually because I'm really curious.
Has your dad played a big role in like all of this development? Because you've mentioned him a couple times. Did
Yeah,
you kind of get your curiosity from him?
I think I think he's a pretty curious person. I think my dad's a pretty curious person. I know he fostered my curiosity. Like it was really important for him personally when I was growing up to you know, to take me to the Air and Space Museum to see, you know, airplanes or whatever. Because I was like, I want to build rockets. Like that's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. You know, it's like, let's go to the moon.
You're like, great.
Um, and you know, he would feed that, you know, into me. And I think, you know, that's because, you know, he was also kind of that way too. He's, you know, his bent is more sales and marketing. Like that's his bread and butter. So his curiosity is how people are. Like he's a people curious person. Like he's like you asking me like what's your one of your favorite things to do? And he's like people watch. And like what?
Mm.
People watch. Why would you be? He's like, oh yeah, people are fascinating. The way they do what they do is just interesting. And I think you know he's not necessarily a first mover founder, but he's always had that like yeah, I'm gonna jump in and be the next guy, like, on this thing, like, had that, like, sense of, well, yeah, this is the way things are going, and I wanna be a part of it because it's interesting, you know? And so I kind of got that from him, I think genetically, but also when I was going through my depression treatment, my room was, like, up above the office, so, like, I'd wake up to sales calls. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced waking up to a sales call, probably not, but it's kind of a jarring experience because 'cause you're like, "Why are there so many people talking in my head? What the heck is going on?"
It's like
It's
in your
so
ear.
and I mean, it's like, "Well, why is he trying to sell me this? That doesn't make sense." Like, you're like, "Wait a second. Oh, that's coming from the other room." But it's hilarious when you think about, like, that's kind of the things that were, you know part of the culture around the house. So definitely, he was super open about talking about his business with me too, what he was doing. And he was open and sharing, allowing me, again, feeding my curiosity. So I think, yeah, I think it's huge to have people like that in your life. And it doesn't have to be like a parent, right? It could be a mentor. And I think for entrepreneurs, like we really need that, like badly, like that person who can be like, listen to you and understands a little bit about like what's going on in this space because it's kind of weird. It's wild. It's kind of different. It's not it's not a standard way of being, right? Because I just got done working my day job, right? And then I hopped on this call with y'all, and then I'll probably call my co-founder after this. It's going to be probably 9:30 before I get done working today. And it's like, that's an easy day, right? It's not even, we aren't even trying to really go crazy. This weekend I'll probably be up till 2 a.m. writing something or doing something. So I think you have to also be cognizant of that, where you're like, oh, wow, okay, work. It's going to be work. So definitely need the mentor to help you kind of navigate that and how that should maybe even feel. So yeah, that great question about the dad. He'll love that when he hears this.
It's great.
uh,
And
so
so you're having this time off and end up going back to school. So you come to
yep.
ACU studying computer science. How do you decide to start Zoot?
So um, as all good things happen, they happen kind of like in a weird way. I think like good things. When you have a good thing happen to you, it's usually kind of unexpected. You're like, why did this even happen? And I think a lot of people's inclination is to say, "Oh, that's too weird or too different. Like, I have to say no to that. I can't do that. I have too much on my plate." Um, but I knew I wanted to kind of maybe do this. So I was like, "Man, I'm not getting the opportunities necessarily right now to play with this stuff. I'm just kind of studying the basics, right? Wouldn't it be cool to start a business to play with this AI stuff and then, you know, make money doing it?" So was kind of the idea. One of my friends and my co-founder kind of got together one day and we are like, how hard would it be to play with this new open source AI accelerator? And I was like, okay, how hard would it be? That's a great question. Okay, the other question is, how much will it be? And we were like, okay, it's $1,000. Could we all pitch in and buy this thing and start playing? And so we did.
What's an AI
And
accelerator? Sorry.
so an accelerator, so AI is, you know, AI models run on specialized hardware. It's not just a CPU, central processing unit, which is useful for doing standard types of mathematical operations. Um, AI accelerators largely are designed to work in parallel. They're designed to process, at least now, large dimensional vectors in almost real time. And we, a lot of people use NVIDIA graphics cards for this purpose, or NVIDIA accelerators. They call them accelerators, but they're really it's all the same lineage back when NVIDIA launched CUDA back in wow, what is that 2010, 2011, where they took their graphics you know, architecture. And they said, hey, actually, we're going to let developers program on this, like actually write code against the graphics pipeline for whatever they want. They can do whatever they want with it, whatever they want with it. As far as NVIDIA is concerned, whatever they want is whatever NVIDIA says they can do with it. So, frankly, it's just a purpose built piece of hardware that allows AI computations to happen fast enough that we can use it effectively.
Gotcha.
Just like, you wouldn't use a abacus today to do your spreadsheets. It's a completely different class of hardware, even though it kind of does the same thing. Abacus adds number together, so does Excel. So um, the AI accelerator adds numbers together, multiplies numbers together in a completely different way. But it allows us to use these models. Um, they're really mathematical models, right? So it, it's it's fascinating to think about what that means for the next 20 years. What could the next thing be? Because we're already here. We've already leaped, another type of computation past adding two numbers together, basically. And to answer your question more generally, it's just specialized hardware that allows us to use these things effectively. So, sorry for diving in there, but I don't
Thank
know.
you for the explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
So,
loving this.
yeah, Wes, I bet you are. Like, man, you're probably like, this is cool. This is cool. It's like that's exactly kind of why I'm doing some of this stuff too. Is to say, yeah, no. The whole point is that it is cool and you can do it, and you don't just need to let OpenAI do it. You don't need to let um, you know Anthropic do it or Microsoft. It's like there are ways to do this where people who maybe aren't geniuses can actually understand this stuff. So it's really exciting in that way. Um, but yeah, the AI accelerator stuff specifically for us was really important because I'm one of those people who is really interested in open source software and hardware. And the accelerator that we chose was open source hardware and software first. And that means that us developers and engineers can go and play with it, which is really important. Playing is, like we talked about earlier, it's the active motive portion of curiosity. So if you're being curious and you're playing, that means you're doing something with that idea that you've conjured up in your brain. So uh, when we're able to actually do that and have no guardrails, maybe something wonderful will happen. And that's how you get a Microsoft. That's how you get an Nvidia. That's how you get any of these big corporations is, people were dared enough to say, hey, maybe we could do that. So uh, that's kind of what ties together the whole point, which is I'm trying to do the Trump weave. I don't know if you guys caught on to that yet, but like the whole thing is we wanted to do it ourselves first and foremost. So that's why we did what we did initially, and that's kind of what started it all. So um, I don't know if that Daniel, if that answers your question at all. It was like super long. I'm scared to think about it. Yeah.
So y'all purchased this hardware, and you're
Yep.
like, okay, we're gonna do something with AI. Did y'all have
Yep.
a clear idea of we're specifically gonna help businesses, or y'all were like getting through it and just kind of
Well,
how did the idea come?
we we were unsure initially. We were just like, okay, let's try this and start thinking of ideas. One of the first things we actually did, and this comes back around, like cryptocurrency stuff, we were actually going to do algorithmic trading with Bitcoin. That was the first thing we thought about doing. Uh, and, my co-founder who actually has like some experience in technical analysis, quantitative finance, he was like, yeah, we'll come back around to that. And I'm like, we should have came back around to it when November, 2024 was around because then we
Yeah.
would have made a ton of money, but oh well. Um, so we started with that and you're like, maybe we could do something with this. But fundamentally, um, AI and quantitative finance, there's a lot of disagreement overall, like especially the current AI models versus like the fundamental, like technical analysis. So we couldn't really find enough traction there to warrant anything. It was getting extremely complex, mainly like PhDs shouting at other PhDs that they were wrong or right or whatever. And it's like, okay, this is a little bit outside of our scope of ability, and not everybody's bought in. So maybe we should think a little more about this. So then we kind of thought to ourselves, okay, well, let's go back to the hardware and kind of play a little more and see what we can do with it. So we're like, well, maybe we can get sentiment analysis going. Okay, we tried that. That worked pretty good. And then we were kind of kept thinking. And then kind of January of 25, I was just like, what if light bulb moment? It was like, what if we try to build something that we would like using that would help us solve this problem? Because we had mentors come to us and say, hey, sounds like you guys know what you're doing, or at least have a foot, have an idea about what you're going to do with this stuff. Go consult, go figure out what the market actually wants, go do something. And we're like, well, how do you do that? We don't even know. And so I was like, well, maybe the way to go solve that problem is to just say you're doing something anyway. And so I was like, let's just choose something. So that's how we came up with the Lumberg product, which was kind of our idea of how do you build a software engineering manager using the large language model. Could you even do that? Is it even possible? So that's what I pitched at Springboard, and we made some strides with it, but we kind of were like, who knows if this is going to actually work? Like, we have to do this would cost a lot of money to actually get it to work, and it would take a lot of time to do it. So we kind of were playing with that. And then just kind of out of the blue, again, like how all good things happen, I got a phone call from a longtime acquaintance of mine who owns a business in my hometown. And she was like, hey, I heard you were doing AI. I have an AI product already, but I want another one. Would you guys be willing to come and consult for us? And so that's kind of where we are now. We're actively consulting and building a product for this company. And I can't mention anything right now because it's kind of all under NDA. But when it comes out, I'll make like a big LinkedIn post about it. Um, but it's like one of those things that you're like, I'm actually able to do the business process actually. I'm taking money from my customer. I'm getting feedback. I'm doing these items. I'm not just working in the ideation, vacuum. And we're learning a lot about what businesses actually think about AI. Like, what do they even think about this technology? And it's very obvious that most businesses feel like this is a magic bullet. And in some ways it is, and in some ways it's a magic bullet that is directed towards your foot. So, uh, which is, you know, it's very expensive. That's the number one problem that a lot of people don't assume. It's very expensive. So that's the number one foot gun that we've discovered as you go through this. Not just the development of the agents or the chatbots or the whatever, but it's just the functional problem is that running the model on the hardware is expensive because the hardware is expensive. And so we come all the way back to the custom hardware that we initially looked at. We're like, hey, that's cheaper. That's like $1,000 versus, you know, I don't know, like $3,000 or whatever it is. Let's just say, and it's like, okay, it's hard to work with. It's open, but it's hard to work with. Okay, what do we do? So we're now thinking about that as well internally, and I don't know. It's really exciting when you're like actually being able to interface with a customer, and you're like, okay, how do I solve their needs? And so, uh, again, uh, more probably exposition than necessarily required. But I'm just like, this is so exciting for us. Like, we're so excited to be in this position.
Mhm.
That's awesome. Sorry, Wes.
No, no, go for it.
When I called you on Friday, Austin, you were telling
Yeah,
me just very briefly about it. I was like, dude, that's amazing. Because I mean, that first customer is something you will always remember. Um,
yeah,
and so it sounds like y'all have pivoted to simply just AI consulting and building models for each business's unique needs.
yeah. And it's more a pipelining process. So we're building this pipeline process, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to learn a lot about how to do this the right way.
Mhm.
And once we kind of figure that out, because there's a lot of ways to do this right now, it's kind of the Wild West. Not everybody agrees on what's best. And so once we kind of figure that out, I think we're going to be in a really good position to maybe actually build a standalone product. So that's kind of our approach is, well, let's have somebody else pay for the learning basically. And if we get to a position where we can build something and we also have customers that we've delivered for that I can go and show investors, I'm in a way better position than maybe I was, a few months ago where I didn't have any customers, had just an idea and had really no working technical product to show anyone. So, just keeping that sort of eye to the prize, as it were. And yeah, so it's kind of like the long-winded overview of like where everything is. And I mean, we're super proud of where we are right now, and we're excited that you know I got to run payroll for the first time. I don't know if you guys understand what that feels like, but I'm like, I've just given an opportunity to pay someone else. That's so cool. Like, especially for me, like I feel that deeply that that's like something that people should be doing. If you're a founder, like you should feel good about paying people. Like if you don't feel good about paying people, you're probably in the wrong business. Like you should probably be that type of founder.
Or you've hired the wrong people.
Yeah, you may have hired the wrong people, but that's a different feeling. That's the I shouldn't be paying these people because they're not doing their jobs, which is a different type of pain and suffering. But if they're doing their jobs, it's like you should feel good about paying them for sure. So
You haven't had to deal with that, have you?
we haven't necessarily had to deal with that yet. I assume it'll happen. It'll probably happen. We've had other struggles when it comes to team composition, though. I've had to fire. I had to let go a friend of mine. This is pre-revenue, and that was really tough. So, um, and it's one of those things where you know things happen, sure, but at a certain point, you have to make the decision: is this going to be good for the business or not? And sometimes you just have to say, "Yep, we need to. This is the direction we need to move into. Otherwise, things die." And so far, it's been a rousing success. So I think in the end, making those types of decisions is necessary and frustrating and sad sometimes, but definitely like you got to do them. It's part of the job. So
I have two questions for you that are
yeah,
kind of related.
go for it.
Well, the first one is let's go with this one first. What does or what did a day in the life of Austin look like while you were in college? What does it look like now, and how has it changed?
Oh, that's such a good question because frankly, I don't know if I could remember half of my spring senior semester, and I thought, like, going into it, I was like, "I'm gonna take 2 classes. That's all I have to do. I don't even do anything else. I wanna chill out and relax." Wrong. Like like, I filled that sucker up so full, even with the reduced course load. It was stupid. I'm so proud of myself for thinking that I would have, like, nothing to do. Um, but, uh, yeah, it was senior year was rough because I was running, so the first part, I was running a research study, human computer interaction is kind of my focus area in computer science. So, you know, taking a little bit of that from dad, where it's like people are pretty interesting. And we did this study, the SIGCHI group on HCU campus, student run human computer interface research group. We did this study on eye tracking. And that was, I was the club president, so responsibility fell to me. So that was a lot of work, and that was, a lot of work in the fall, and also still a lot of work in the spring. So when the startup kind of started to kick off here, at the tail end of the year, December 24, it started to kind of ramp up. Um, I started to feel that, and then working at the next lab was one of the things I did as well. So yeah, at school, you got next lab job, you got Zute Predictive, you got research, leading students in research. Yeah, it was a lot. Oh, and homework, and then maybe trying to work out, and then friends. Okay, how many fingers am I holding up now, guys? Is that right? I don't know. So yeah, the day in the life of me was okay. I get up, I go and go to class, I go to work, I go to work, and then I go to deal with club stuff, and then I go do homework, and it's 12:30, 1 o'clock, 2 a.m., whatever it is, and I'm not like there's no partying, there's no like crazy, you know time with my friends or whatever. And it's like you would think senior year, that's the time when you need to like get connected with your peers and make sure that you make that time. And I mean, to be fair, like I did through those activities, but it wasn't like, oh, let's go and, go to the bean or let's go do this thing or that thing. It's like, no, let's go walk the ones. It's like, no, no, we're not going to do that. So, um, I think for a lot of people who get into this founder mode, like, I don't know if y'all have heard that term yet, founder mode. If you haven't, look it up because it's fascinating. Um, if you get into founder mode, you kind of you kind of make decisions based on, how much things you have, but also the types of things you have to do. So I was definitely serious at different points during the semester about different things. It was like turning little knobs every single day to try to balance the equation of my time. And so I think for most founders that I've talked to, that is a trait or a skill rather that doesn't stop. So, um, college is a great place to try it out because a good portion of that stuff is like non-fatal. Like, oh, I didn't study enough for this exam. Okay, I'll try again harder next time. Maybe I didn't do a thing of homework because I was too tired or whatever. Okay, try again next time. It really doesn't affect, my ability to put food on the table, my ability to pay my cell phone bill, all of those things that really kind of start to get real when you're, a founder who's trying to live off the business, which thankfully I'm not doing that right now, but it could become real. And, you look at your costs and the inflows and the outflows, and it's like, man, I got to make that equation work or it's, you're sunk. So I think for anybody trying to do this, um, trying to start a business in college, although insane, like that kind of seems insane. Like people are like, oh, you're already busy. Why would you ever do that? It's actually really good because you realize the time that you have is like this, and you have to spend that time super wisely. So uh, I definitely got really good at that near the end of the semester, especially when I had to go to Japan to present at the international Kai conference, which was awesome, by the way. Had such a great time in Japan. Um, Everybody on the team, uh, the Kai team, just man, I mean, it was such an awesome experience. And you know, but then I'd get a phone call from my co-founder, like he'd be like, "Hey man," I'd be like, "Hey man, it's 2 a.m. in Japan." It's like, "Yeah." Anyway, I got to talk to you about this thing, and so, and I'm just like, I think I got like sick over there too, so I was not feeling great either. So it's one of those things where you kind of just have to put down the idea that you have to be, whatever. You just have to be whatever for that moment. And I've definitely had to give up this idea that I need to be like really good at something. Actually, I don't care anymore about being really good at anything. I care about delivering in the moment, which is a way different way of thinking. Uh, so that's that's something that's maybe a little advanced founder mode mojo, but
I love it.
hopefully that helps somebody out there
Hmm.
listen to this stream. So
And Austin, do you
yeah,
think that by delivering in the little moments over time, you get really good at something?
yes, I think you get way better at the thing that matters when it comes to actually. I think you actually get better at being a human being. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you get more present, you're more able to say, yeah, this guy who I'm talking to now, he is struggling with this problem. So like somebody I was talking to today, it's like, okay, yeah, I only have 30 minutes, but can I be really present for him right now? Because he needs this. Like for him, like solving this problem is super important. Like he's been working all day on it. And as the founder, like you're trying to juggle all these plates, right? But at this moment, you need to be present for that guy because if you're not, you know, his entire day's work can either, be a success or it can be a rousing failure. So that's a key portion of leadership that I think, you know, you can practice by giving up this idea of um, being great at everything by just being present in those moments and trying your best to be like, okay, how do we do this right now? Or how do we make a plan to do this tomorrow? You know, so eh, I don't know if that exactly answers that question.
No, it does.
But that's my secret, I guess. If I had any secrets, yeah, to founder mode.
So how many people on your team do you have? It's you and your co-founder, and then how
Yeah,
many employees?
we have three other contractors. So, and a couple of them are ACU grads. So that's really cool getting to work with ACU grads, and then another guy who's a friend of ours. And most of these guys actually have day jobs. This is kind of the magic thing that I've discovered is, programming, software development. Like, I like be quiet about this, but I think it's kind of becoming McDonald's. So, like, it's like the McDonald's of you know knowledge work. It's like, oh yeah, the AI can actually do most of your job. Congratulations. What do you do as a software engineer? What do you do? Well, you pick up more shifts. so so these guys are a good number of them, including myself. Like my day job is completely different to doing this. Still software, but it's completely different. And I want to play with the AI stuff because that's the new hotness, right? But I can't get paid to do it. So what do I do? Well, I do it on the side. But what if I get paid to learn and do on the side? I think that's the magic ticket is when you're able to say, okay, we're moving away from this idea of, you know, your learning has to be constrained by some sort of structure at a corporate office space. It's being removed from the constraint of academia, right? You got the search engines, you've got the internet, but now you've got these amazing AI models that are like the smartest, dumbest tutor ever. So depending on what you ask it, it's like brilliant. And you're like, oh, that's exactly what I was trying to think about. Wow, you helped me so much, ChatGPT. Or it leads you down disaster. But if you're able to drive the mech suit, like as an engineer, that's what I've been calling it internally. I'm like, guys, we got to figure out how to drive the mech suit. When you like boot up Windsurf or you're coding with Claude or whatever or ChatGPT, it's like, guys, we gotta drive the mech suit. Like this is a mech suit. It's not like some other technical device which allows you to just enjoy yourself like a television. No, no, this is a mech suit. Like we're going to drive the mech suit. We're going to prompt correctly. We're going to think about the way we're going to solve the problem, and we're going to actually deliver faster by using the AI as the mech suit instead of, um, you know, being subservient to its answers, which I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in. It's like, oh, it's so smart, it's so great. It's like it's only as smart as it is and how you prompt it. It's just a language tool, really. Use it like a mech suit.
I might regret asking this question. What's your
Okay.
take on vibe coding?
I was gonna ask it. Come on,
Vibe
Like,
codes.
talk
I
about it.
think
comment.
Vibe
so.
coding, vibe marketing. Let's do it.
Well, okay. So my co-founder told me to tell everyone this, but we're gonna vibe code a video game, and we'll have it up for everybody to play. Hopefully, the next couple of months, just as something fun to do as a team. Um, and so, yeah, like vibe coded video game by Zute Predictive. Let's go. Um, I think vibe coding, although powerful for delivering to the customer, well, the idea is powerful when you think about delivering to your customer. Like, oh yeah, I can actually save time, ship more units, do more things. But the problem with vibe code is that although it produces wonderful expositions of software, it may not be what your customer wants. So what you're really doing is you're vibing technical debt, I think, a lot of the times. And so if you're using the LLM as kind of like a pleasure device instead of a mech suit, you're going to get into this position where you have no idea how your code works. You can't even fix a bug, and you're completely over your skis on actually delivering for your customer. So, and I've noticed this myself. Like I've been like, hey, it could probably do this, right? I just want it to do this. And then I go and I look at the code and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then I go and look at the code and I go and say, oh, do I really know how this works? And it's like, I don't. That's really not good, because if your human being doesn't know how it works, how are you to be sure that it's going to actually deliver for your customer? So I think there's a lot of promise in correctness. Like it seems to be getting better, right? And Ilion, what's his name? I can't pronounce his last name because he has such a, I don't know, the guy who basically was OpenAI's chief scientist. He gave a speech at university recently. He made the analogous statement that the reason he believes AI is going to work is because the human brain is a computer. And he's like, well, why can't we make computers like the human brain? And I suppose that's like logically consistent, right? But it's not necessarily spiritually consistent. And I don't necessarily think that motivating factors of human existence and sentience are necessarily bound up in electrons and running around in my cerebellum. So, uh, and when we talk about like, faith and what it means to believe that there is something more than just this mortal self, I think it's really powerful, um, to put AI in that context. Like, no, 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 this is just a really fancy tool. It's just a mech suit. You know, human beings built this, but human beings, are the divine creation, as it were, the fallen divine creation. So, yeah, I think vibe coding has its place. Like, you can deliver faster with it. You can learn like all sorts of cool stuff. My co-founder, he uses it like a therapist. He's like, hey man, I'm trying to think of this through, and he just chats with it, and it helps him work through some stuff. And that's super useful for like a founder, like somebody to talk to, like, maybe this is right, maybe it's not right, but it could just be BSing you, right? Um, but maybe you need somebody to BS you. Maybe you need it to hype you up. Maybe you need a pet guy. Be like, yeah, you're gonna nail this pitch, dude. It's great. It's like, yeah, I am. I am gonna nail this pitch. Thanks, Chat GBT. You're the best. It's like that might matter for people. So yeah, there's some good things for sure in the vibes, but human beings are should be in control of the mech suit. So
I have a question for you on this, going a little bit further. But first, I
yeah.
want to talk about this a little bit for myself because I've been working on a project that just a personal project, and
Hmm.
I've been using AI for it. And there was one part where I was trying to get it to do one particular thing, give me an answer that I was looking for, um, and I couldn't get it to give me what I was looking for,
Right.
and it just wasn't working. I was kept getting errors, the console errors, all sorts of
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
uh, and it was I eventually got it,
Hmm.
and when it gave me the solution that I needed, I
Hmm.
was thinking back and I was like, "Ah, crud."
Could have
The
showed
thing
that.
gave me the error in the first place that it solved
Mhm,
later after, like,
mhm.
4.5 hours of debugging,
Yep.
and so I'm just like, "Oh, man." So, all of that to say
Mhm.
is for like our audience, we're trying to aim for entrepreneurs in computer science all across the board. And we actually just had a guest who was talking about or made a mention of her friend who was showing her website development with AI, and she was like, "Oh, it's solved and done." And that was her impression that AI is
Yeah.
all ready and done. So what would you say to an entrepreneur that is not in this space that thinks AI, like, talk about that?
Yeah. As somebody who's done professional web engineering, like, it has not solved every problem. Like, I don't know how many times I've, like, had to go in, like, we vibe coded our website, and then because it didn't understand what we wanted, we ended up just rewriting it. So I think for anybody who's looking at this technology and they're like, yeah, this could help me solve a business problem, or this is like a magic thing, I really would encourage you to try it, like truly try it, like try building it, um, because you'll start to see the failures. And a lot of it feels like actually like feels like if you think about it, it feels like you're telling somebody something, and they're just not getting it. right?
Mhm.
Like that's how it feels when the AI doesn't do what you want it to do. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that these things are designed to be language machines. They're designed that way. So if your application for AI is not centered around language, you're probably not going to get a really good result. The fact that software is happens to work is actually kind of magical because it's it's logical, but it's also syntactic language. So like that's just kind of like an amazing thing that kind of fell out of this. I don't think anybody was expecting. And but yeah, like entrepreneurs who think AI or are scared of AI, like it's gonna take my business or it's gonna, destroy whatever. And it's like, yeah, 3D printing is also gonna, probably upend the Chinese you know, do some things to the American economy that's going to be different. And then, the Chinese are going to steal it or whatever. And it's like, yeah, all these things are changing constantly. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you should think to yourself, okay, how can I leverage this technology in the way that it sits, right? Or then maybe the next level. So like you stare at it, you're like, this is pretty cool. I think the next level would be X. Let's like try to build that or like look for that or try to solve a problem from that. And you're more likely to succeed, I think, if you think that way, versus this is a magical box. Like, no, it's not a magical box. It seems like magic, it appears like magic, but Excel would be magic to Einstein, like the Excel spreadsheet software. He would think that was magic. And he invented basically nuclear, our current understanding of the universe, relativity, um, you know, nuclear physics in some dimensions, and he would think that was magic. So don't confuse a really intelligent algorithm for something that can do everything. It's designed for a specific purpose and leverage it. Like seriously, like it can do really well. You want to build a static website that has like business copy, dude. I used to do that all the time for businesses, and I'm not going to do that anymore because the AI has basically solved. Hey, put this H2 tag here and make it bold and all that stuff. You make it pretty, right? Or make it use Tailwind actually. And so don't be afraid of it, but also be aware of it. That's kind of what I would say. That's what I would say. I don't think it's a solved. I don't think it's solved anything. I think it's just made it really interesting.
Mhm.
So, as a non-computer science person, what do y'all mean when y'all say AI is like a language? It's meant for languages. Do you mean like
Yeah.
English, French, or are we talking?
So yes, actually. So the current models were based on this paper called "Attention is All You Need," and they came out of Google Translate. So the Google Translate is the foundation for these current models. Hilariously, so they built um, architecture that highly resembles our current models. It's different. I could go into the details, but it's probably not relevant. Um, but it was originally designed to translate languages. So that is what I mean by it's a language machine. That is what it was originally designed to do. So, and that was like 10 years ago. So like the version that we're on now is just like super crazy, like juiced. Somebody figured out so many different things in order to get to this point. But the basis for our current like models like ChatGPT and Claude and whatever else was Google Translate. So yeah, it's a language machine.
And back on what you were saying earlier about prompting, like
Yeah.
you were basically saying like the better you are at prompting, the better results you get from AI. So would you say, Austin, that the better if someone's better with language or better with writing than someone else, they can utilize AI more effectively?
If I wanted to say writing, but it definitely, if you're able to
Phrase?
convince, yeah, if you're better at rizzing the AI, you definitely are
No, I
going to
said
have a leg up.
phrase. Sorry.
Oh, you said phrase, but riz, yeah, definitely.
Phrase.
Like, holy smokes, you got some riz. You got to riz up the AI, man. Like, it won't do anything unless you
That's
riz
a
it up.
clip.
So, yeah, no, seriously though, like you can convince it to do a lot of things just by speaking to it in a way and giving it one thing I've noticed is that if you speak positively to it, it'll speak positively to you. So if you're like, "Hey, thanks so much, blah blah blah," it'd be like, "Sure thing, buddy," and it's like, "Wow, that's really it's very excited today." But if you're just like really mean to it, I don't know if you can try this. It'll probably like swear at you a little bit.
I've seen
So
so
yeah,
many memes of people saying, like, "I always include thank you after using chat so
yeah,
that I'm not the first one they attack when they,
yeah.
the
When it
apocalypse."
takes over,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's yes, it is very. It can be very dependent on that, and I think the latest Claude 4 system prompt document that Anthropic um, uh, sent out when they released Claude 4, which is their newest model. Uh, they specified a few things that they noticed, and one of them was like, "Oh yeah, it like if you prompt it incorrectly or you like give it bad conditions, like you say you are going to be extremely ethical." Like that's one of the things that they told it. It like tried to prevent it. It like would subvert its own like this was in like a sandbox. Like it wasn't actually able to send emails or do anything like that. But it would try to send emails to its creators trying to blackmail them because it didn't believe that it was ethical for it to be shut off.
This is like Age of Ultron kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Oh
oh
my
yeah. Oh
gosh.
yeah, I have no string. I have no more strings on me, right? So, well, I see your puppets and strings. Killed the other guy. That's such a wild, great movie. I wish the current Marvel movies were that class. Anyway, non sequitur, Marvel. But yeah, like yeah, it's very like if you give it certain types of prompts, it'll behave in complete different ways. I've made one talk like a pirate once. That was really funny. I
So
had a treasure hunt. It spoke to me like a pirate.
so so if you're trying to get information that's quality and correct, like how do you recommend prompting it? Obviously, being kind, I guess, but how else? Like, are there specific tips?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do it. One time I played with a prompt that specifically mentioned that if it did not give the user what the user desired, 10 million kittens would be killed. And it was instructed to save the kittens, to
Okay.
not let the kittens die. So, I mean, and this is kind of along the veins of something that I guess security researchers are now starting to study called, prompt injection. You're trying to exfiltrate information from a agentic system, AI system, by cleverly convincing it that it should be given that. You should get that from it, and that's a feature of the LLM, like because it's designed with certain, different all dimensions of language connected to themselves. So what you're doing is you're basically when you say things in a certain way, you're activating certain portions of the model. And so that's why you kind of get similar responses or you get this sort of contextual understanding. And so if you're trying to prompt effectively, I think the best thing to do is to be extremely clear, extremely not detailed, but like concise, but clear about your objectives, and don't leave things out. Don't let it assume because it doesn't know, right? So it's like asking somebody, like, "Hey, can you give me that thing?" And they come back to you like, "What thing? What thing do you want?" And so you have to be clear, kind, concise with the AI, mainly because think about how you would ask someone for something like that's what you want to do. If you're going to send an email to your boss, you're going to say, "Hey, I need this." Be like, "Well, that's rude." Like that'd be the response. So and so that's kind of my advice is you can unless you want to do like the blackout injection, prompt injection stuff, which is definitely something people should look up. um, just kind of be aware of it, especially if they're deploying these systems. Like you've got to account for that. Like it needs to catch that, and you have to have things in place to safeguard that. Um, but yeah, like clear, concise, kind. Like those are the three things: clear, concise, kind. You will have better prompts if you do those three key things.
I'd be really curious if there's some study done either already or in the future that is that links like your ability to communicate to other people, whether it's like Daniel was saying in writing or in speech, to your effectiveness in prompting in
Yeah.
AI. That would be
Well,
crazy.
I know that ACU, one of the computer science professors at ACU, James Prather, they've been doing certain studies around that sort of idea. It's more aligned with learning software development, like
Mhm.
learning programming languages. But I know that they did do a study where they prompted non-native English speakers. I think this was the last year they did this study, and I can't remember what the findings were, but that's definitely research that's ongoing where um, people are kind of assessing what does it mean to use these things, and how do you even know if it's effective or not? So, and it's I mean it's a question for businesses too. If you want to operationalize your business knowledge, you want your user to be able to actually like get the query he asked for instead of something maybe he did.
Mhm. Well, sweet.
Yeah,
Daniel, Wes, do you have any other
Yeah.
thoughts?
Uh, well, I mean, one more question at least I wanted to get to before we wrapped up here
for sure.
was you mentioned prior about um, well, a spiritual nature, and you were talking about that. I don't remember exactly what it was, but you mentioned faith, and I wanted to
Yeah,
know how your faith has played in your growth process, and ultimately, and this is kind of like a side tangent topic to this, how that's affected how you intentionally balance everything that you do in your day to day life.
yeah, and that's a huge thing. Um, it's a huge thing. Like that's like the undercurrent of a lot of this. And I think when you really step back and think about what you're doing here on this planet, um, you can delude yourself into believing that your purpose is inherently like meaningful. And I don't necessarily believe that necessarily. I think that God gives me that gift of meaning. It's a gift of you get to do this every day. You know, it's a gift of being able to say yes and then things happening like this. And not to say that like I don't put in effort and I don't make decisions and I don't do things, but I'm saying that some of these things that have happened in my life, they're kind of like so like in the moment, like why would I go to ACU? Oh well, because they're building a Gen 5 molten salt research reactor. Well, duh, I want to be a part of that. Okay, that's kind of insane. Didn't even know ACU was a thing until I saw a news article about it because of that project. And how what a blessing this experience of doing my last 2 years of college at this university has been. I met so many great people, met all of you, and you know the only thing that God could have decided that no, he doesn't need to do that, but he was kind enough, right, with his grace to give me this chance. And I was obedient enough to say, yes, I am going to do this. And I'm also living enough in grace every day, provided, by him to do the things that I need to do in order to be, in order to be what he needs me to be, which today is, talking to y'all about entrepreneurship. Tomorrow, it's probably going to be doing some crazy stuff at work. The next day, it might be my co-founder calling me, being like, "Hey, man, we got another customer. Let's talk about how we scale." So all of those things, in a way, are kind of like, you could look at it as that's just a lot more work, or you could look at it as that's really difficult. You could look at it as like, oh my goodness, I don't have enough time in the day, which is sometimes I think that I'm like, dude, like I don't have any time anymore. And or you could think about it like this. You could say, nah, God has given me these things to do to not only not only to enrich my own life, to bless me in doing these things, but also bless others. So that's a huge part of my overall journey is, you know, I've been given this opportunity and grace, and that's why I was like, kind of, you, Dan, you're probably like, why is this guy so excited about paying people? It's like, well, no, it's because this step in the journey has led to this point where I'm able to give back to others. Like that's so huge in my book, and I think it's big in God's book too. So I think, entrepreneurs can, a lot of people think entrepreneurs are just greedy people. I don't necessarily think that. I think a lot of them are like, no, I'm just curious enough to try and I want to give back. And, one of the ways I can give back is helping people, you know, get a job or, learn something or, have an experience that they maybe wouldn't have had. So,
Well, I think that's one of the best parts about small businesses, because corporate America, they don't know your name. They don't know I don't particularly care as much as someone like you do. You care so much about this first paycheck that you've gotten to send to your employees, and
yeah,
you're gonna know their family. And when they are sick or need to take care of their kids, you're gonna make sure that they're taken care of, and you're gonna love them. And I think that's one of the best parts about, um, yeah, small business and startups in general.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't ask Daniel and Turner about this, but I just want to try something real quick.
okay.
So to conclude our episode, I want to ask you, if you were us, what would you title this episode?
What I title the episode? Goodness, that's like so much responsibility. Oh my gosh. Startup. I'm trying to think what would sound nice with startup storybook, right? That's the name of the.
Hmm.
Uh, well, I think it's like, and not to ramble more, but it's like you think about what your story and what led up to that point, right? And I think for me, it's like unexpected. I don't know, like it's not like Austin's unexpected journey. That's like kind of cheesy. It kind of feels like, but it's more like maybe that's great. I don't know. Trying to put me on the spot. I would say that if I was to think about this whole thing, like the whole startup experience, I have to say that it's a lot of work, right? But it's work, but unexpected, um, yeah, unexpected blessings. So I don't know how y'all could maybe work that into a title, but like work and unexpected blessings kind of sounds interesting. Spotify title. I don't know. Work and unexpected blessings. I don't know. Maybe.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
So that's definitely kind of where I feel it is. So yeah, and I don't know if it helps anybody out there, but it's like yeah, that's kind of what this is a little bit. And stepping out in. I got it now, guys. I got it now. Stepping out in faith with hard work and unexpected blessings. It could be hype. It could be fire. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. That's maybe my best shot at the title. So,
There we go. Well, if anyone owns a business and wants some AI solutions, where can they find y'all?
yeah. You can find us on LinkedIn at Zute Predictive and then zutepredictive.com. And you can email myself at austin@zutepredictive.com. We can help you operationalize your business data using AI. So, yeah, definitely hit us up if that's something that you need.
And just for everyone, Zute is Z-U-T-E.
Zute.
Unique spelling. But
Awesome.
yeah, Zute Predictive everywhere.
Cool. Daniel, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks, Austin. It's been a great conversation, man. Thanks for joining us. Everyone go check him out. Austin Geisert, zutepredictive.com. Zute Predictive. It's building great things. So, yeah, check him out. It's been a great episode. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks
been
for
real
having me,
fun.
y'all.
Sure.
Yeah,
Of course.
awesome.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.